The young woman moved quietly through the crowded cafe, carrying a tray of drinks. Her steps were measured and careful, almost invisible among the chatter and laughter that filled the room. She had worked here for years, yet few customers knew her name. She smiled politely when someone looked her way, but most people barely noticed her. Her life felt like it was happening around her, rather than with her. She had grown used to this invisibility. Finding a strange comfort in blending into the background, she had always loved music. From the earliest days she could remember, she had been drawn to the sound of a piano. Her fingers longed to dance across the keys to create melodies that could speak what words never could. But life had not been kind. Money was always tight, and opportunities to learn had been few. Yet she had found a way to teach herself. Late at night, after the cafe had closed and the world was silent, she would sit at the small, old piano in her tiny apartment. The notes were sometimes shaky at first, but with time, they began to form songs that filled her room with warmth and light. Her coworkers knew her as quiet, reliable, and hard-working. She never complained, even when the cafe was crowded and the orders piled up. She moved efficiently, balancing trays and refilling drinks, always keeping her composure. Some of them had joked about her shyness, not realizing there was a rich inner world hidden behind her calm exterior. She did not mind being overlooked. In fact, she had grown used to it. It allowed her the freedom to dream, to practice, and to imagine a life where her music could be heard. She remembered the first time she had truly played the piano for someone else. It was a small moment, but it had filled her with a mixture of fear and excitement. She had been 12, sitting on the old piano bench in her living room, her fingers trembling as she pressed the keys. Her parents had watched quietly, unsure of what to expect. But when the first notes floated into the air, something shifted. Her mother's eyes had softened, and her father had nodded in quiet approval. That small moment had been enough to ignite a spark that she'd carried with her through the years. Yet, as she grew older, the world seemed determined to keep her invisible. Jobs needed to be taken, bills needed to be paid, and her dreams of music often had to wait. She had become skilled at hiding her talent, at keeping it tucked away like a secret treasure. The piano was her escape, her sanctuary, the place where she could be herself without judgment. She practiced scales and chords, created small compositions, and lost herself in the music. Each note carried a piece of her heart, and every melody was a whisper of the life she longed for. The cafe was her stage in a different way. She moved through the tables with grace, balancing trays and taking orders with efficiency. She knew the regular customers' preferences by heart, and she remembered small details about their lives. Yet, even with all this care, she remained in the background. A quiet presence among the louder, more demanding personalities. Some customers would comment on her politeness, but very few noticed the intelligence and sensitivity behind her eyes. She often wondered what it would be, like if someone really saw her. Not just saw her as a waitress, or as someone who took orders and served drinks, but truly saw her as a person. Someone who had dreams, talents, and emotions that ran deep. It was a thought that lingered in the quiet moments between tasks. When she could steal a breath and let herself imagine a different life, in those moments she felt both hope and sadness intertwined. Hope that one day someone would notice her, and sadness that the world often judged too quickly. Her friends, few as they were, encouraged her in small ways. They knew she loved music, and they often teased her about being the quiet genius of the group. She laughed at these jokes, hiding the intensity of her ambition behind a smile. She did not share her full dreams with anyone, afraid that they might seem impossible or foolish. The piano was her companion, her confidant. The one thing that never judged her or demanded more than she could give. One evening, after a long shift at the cafe, she sat at the piano in her small apartment. The room was dimly lit, with shadows stretching across the walls. She closed her eyes and let her fingers find the keys on their own. At first, she played familiar pieces, ones she had memorized and perfected over time. The sound was soothing, a balm for the exhaustion of the day. Then, as she allowed herself to get lost in the music, she began to create. Improvised notes flowed from her hands, forming melodies that were both delicate and powerful. She felt alive in a way that nothing else could give her. Every note was a part of her story, a way to express feelings she could not put into words as she played. Memories, surface moments of loneliness, small victories, tiny sparks of joy. The music became a bridge between her past and her present, a connection to a life that she had imagined but not yet lived. She played for hours, losing track of time, until the faint light of dawn seeped through the curtains. When she finally stopped, her hands were tired, but her heart felt full. In those quiet moments, she remembered why she had kept her music alive, despite the challenges and setbacks. It was her voice when no one else listened, her proof that she existed beyond the roles others assigned her. Despite her talent, she remained cautious. She had learned from experience that the world could be dismissive, cruel even, to those who dared to show vulnerability. She had seen others with dreams crushed, ambitions ignored, and talent overlooked. So, she played in private, in the shadows, nurturing her gift with patience and care. But deep down, she knew that someday, somehow, her music would have to step into the light. At work the next day, she moved through the cafe with her usual quiet efficiency. A new customer arrived, a young woman with a warm smile and curious eyes. She noticed the waitress's calm demeanor and polite attention. And for a moment, their eyes met in a way that felt meaningful. It was a small connection, easily missed, but it left an impression. For the first time in a long while, the young woman felt a flicker of possibility. Perhaps someone could see her, not just her exterior, but the depth she carried within. The cafe buzzed with life around her, yet she felt a strange sense of anticipation. Something inside her told her that change was coming, that her quiet life might soon be touched by unexpected opportunities. She did not know when or how, but she allowed herself a small, secret hope. The thought of her music reaching others, of her voice being heard, filled her with a quiet determination. She continued her work, serving drinks and clearing tables, but her mind wandered to melodies and harmonies. She imagined the notes rising above the cafe, filling the space with emotion and story. In her imagination, people listened, captivated and moved by her music. She smiled softly to herself, feeling a connection to a world beyond her current one. Even if no one else could see it yet, she knew that her music was real, and it mattered, even as the day went on. The routine of work, the clatter of dishes, and the chatter of customers, she held on to that inner world. It was fragile, like a small flame protected from the wind, but it was strong enough to sustain her. She knew that the path ahead might be uncertain, that recognition could take time. But she trusted in the power of her talent and the truth of her own passion. Music had always been her anchor, and it would continue to guide her, no matter how overlooked she remained. As the sun set and the cafe emptied, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. Another night of practice awaited, another opportunity to pour her heart into the piano. The world might not notice her today, but she knew that every note she played was a step toward the day when she would no longer be invisible. She took a deep breath, wiped down the last table, and left the cafe with quiet resolve. Carrying with her the unspoken promise of a talent that could not stay hidden forever, her life had always been quiet. But it had never been easy. She remembered the small apartment she grew up in, the cramped space filled with the sound of laughter and sometimes harsh words. Her family struggled to make ends meet, and she learned early how to stay out of the way, to be seen as helpful but not demanding, to blend in so she wouldn't become a burden. Even as a child, she had a way of noticing things that others overlooked, the way a neighbor smiled briefly, the quiet rhythm of rain on the window, the sounds coming from a piano at a nearby music school that made her heart ache with longing. Those small things became her companions in a life that often felt too large and too loud for her presence. Her parents worked long hours, often leaving her alone for much of the day. She took care of herself, and sometimes for her younger sibling too, learning responsibility before she felt ready. Money was tight, so toys and treats were rare. Yet she discovered a secret joy in music, something that belonged to her alone. She listened to the faint notes drifting from old radios, or the piano in a neighbor's house, and imagined herself playing along. She begged for a small keyboard one birthday, and though it wasn't much, it became her world. She learned slowly, by trial and error, finding her way through the black and white keys, feeling the patterns under her fingers, and gradually understanding the power of creating music that could speak to others even when words failed. At school, she was quiet, the kind of student who stayed in the back of the classroom, always listening, observing, and rarely speaking out. Teachers called her polite and well-behaved, but few saw her intelligence or creativity. Some classmates ignored her entirely, others teased her for being so reserved. She accepted it, because she had learned that attention often brought more trouble than reward. Instead, she focused on small victories, mastering a piece on the piano, or finishing a difficult homework assignment, or reading a book from cover to cover. These private successes became her source of pride. The piano became more than a hobby. It became her lifeline. Late at night, she would sit at the old keyboard in the corner of her room, playing softly so as not to disturb anyone. She learned to express herself through melody, finding ways to pour her emotions into the keys. Her music reflected her hopes, her frustrations, and the moments of joy she stole from her otherwise challenging days. Even when life was heavy, when arguments or disappointment filled the air, she could play. And for a few moments, everything felt right. The piano understood her in a way no person ever could. Her teenage years were a delicate, balancing act between responsibilities at home and her love for music. She worked small jobs after school, sometimes babysitting, sometimes delivering newspapers, always careful not to let her dreams slip away entirely. She saved every coin she could, dreaming of a chance to attend a real music class or to have a proper piano of her own. But life seemed to have other plans, and she learned to wait, practicing patience as she continued to improve her skills in secret. Her friendships were few, but meaningful. She connected with those who respected her quiet nature and appreciated her depth. They sometimes encouraged her to share her talent, to let someone hear the music that lived inside her, but fear and caution always held her back. She knew that not everyone would understand, that the world could be harsh to those who showed vulnerability. She had witnessed too many dreams crushed, too many talents overlooked. She did not want her own hope to be discarded in the same way. There were moments when she almost gave up on music entirely. Life's demands, the pressure to work and survive, and the constant feeling of being invisible weighed heavily on her. There were days when she put the keyboard away and told herself that music could wait. But each time she felt that emptiness inside, she would return to the keys, and the notes would fill her room with life again. Music had become her anchor, her secret strength, and she refused to let it go. Her early adult years brought more responsibilities. She moved out of her family home, renting a small apartment near the city. The work at the cafe provided stability but little recognition. She poured her energy into every task, serving customers with a smile and a polite word. Though many did not notice the care she took, co-workers respected her diligence but often dismissed her quiet nature. To the world, she remained an ordinary waitress, someone who could easily be overlooked. Yet in the privacy of her apartment, she was extraordinary. Her music had grown more complex, more expressive, a reflection of the person she was beneath the surface. She often thought about what it would be like to perform for others, to share the music that had always been hers alone. She imagined the reactions of strangers, the surprise and admiration that might appear on their faces. But fear always held her back. What if they didn't like her music? What if they laughed or ignored her? These questions lingered, keeping her talent hidden. Safe from the judgment of a world that had rarely seen her for who she truly was, one evening, while closing up the cafe, she heard a young man practicing the piano in a nearby hall. The music was confident, bold, and it made her feel both inspired and sad. She wondered if she would ever have the courage to let someone hear her play, to reveal the part of herself that existed only in secret. She pressed her lips together and carried on with her work, but the longing in her heart grew stronger. It was a mixture of desire and fear, the need to be seen and the worry that she would remain unnoticed. Her apartment, though small, had become a sanctuary. The piano stood in the corner, slightly worn, its keys slightly uneven, yet perfect to her touch. She spent hours there each night, playing pieces she had memorized and improvising melodies that came from her soul. The music was sometimes somber, sometimes joyful, and often filled with a bittersweet feeling of longing. She closed her eyes as she played, imagining herself in a concert hall, with people listening and feeling moved by what she created. In those moments, she felt alive, free from the burdens and invisibility of daily life. Her quiet dedication began to bear fruit in subtle ways. She noticed improvements in her technique, a better understanding of harmony, and the ability to convey emotion through touch alone. She experimented with different styles, blending classical influences with her own intuition. Sometimes, she would record herself on her phone and listen back, marveling at the music she had created in solitude. Each small accomplishment reminded her that her talent was real and that it mattered, even if the world did not yet know it. Despite her progress, she remained humble. She did not seek attention, for she had learned that recognition could be fleeting and unreliable. Instead, she played for herself, and occasionally for the few friends who encouraged her quietly. They would listen in awe, often surprised by the depth and skill of her playing. Their appreciation was meaningful, but she still longed for a broader audience, for the chance to let her music speak to strangers who might be moved by it. Life continued its rhythm of work and practice, challenges and small joys. She found ways to stay connected to music in her everyday life, humming tunes while serving customers, tapping rhythms on the tables, and observing the world with an awareness that enriched her compositions. She discovered that music was not only a private escape but also a lens through which she could understand the people around her, their moods, their emotions, and their unspoken stories. This awareness deepened her artistry and strengthened her resolve to one. While they step out of the shadows, she knew that patience would be essential. Talent alone was not enough to change her circumstances. She had to wait for the right opportunity, a moment when her skill and her courage could meet. The anticipation of that moment gave her a quiet excitement, feeling that life might yet surprise her in ways she had only dreamed of. Each day of work, each evening at the piano, brought her closer to the person she wanted to become and the life she wished to live. And so, she continued, carrying her dreams quietly, nurturing them in secret, and living a life that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Every note she played, every melody she created, was a promise to herself that one day her music would be heard, and she would no longer be invisible. One ordinary evening at the cafe, she was moving between tables, carrying a tray filled with cups of coffee and tea. The chatter of the customers mixed with the clinking of dishes, creating a background of noise that she had learned to tune out. It was the same routine as every day, yet there was something different that evening. A special event had been organized in the cafe, a small gathering where a few local artists were invited to showcase their talents. She had heard the organizers talking about it earlier, but she did not think it concerned her. She was just the waitress, invisible as always. She had finished taking an order and was about to return to the counter when she noticed a piano set up in the corner of the room. It looked polished and new, unlike the one she practiced on at home. A few people were gathered around it, testing the sound and preparing for a performance. Her heart skipped a beat as she stared at the piano. It had been so long since she had played in front of anyone, even casually. The temptation to sit and play tugged at her like a quiet whisper. Her fingers itched, remembering the feel of keys under her touch, the way music could take over her body and soul. For a moment she stood frozen, unsure what to do. No one had noticed her, and yet she felt a strange pull toward the piano. It was as if it was calling to her, inviting her to share what had been hidden for so long. She took a deep breath, telling herself that she should not, that she was just a waitress, not a performer. But the music inside her was too strong to ignore. Slowly, she moved closer, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the bench. A few curious glances followed her, but no one questioned her presence. She sat down, feeling the smooth surface of the piano under her fingers. She hesitated, unsure if anyone would appreciate what she was about to do. Then, she pressed the first key. A single note resonated through the room, soft but clear. The sound was like a spark in the air, catching the attention of those nearby. She continued, letting her fingers move naturally, her heart guiding her through a melody she had created over years of private practice. At first, the room was quiet. People continued talking in low voices, not realizing that something extraordinary had begun. She played with care, feeling the music grow in confidence and strength. The melody was gentle at first, almost a whisper, then gradually it became bolder, filling the cafe with sound that was impossible to ignore. Customers paused mid-conversation, their heads turning toward the piano. The energy in the room began to shift. A few people stopped what they were doing entirely, drawn to the beauty of the music. Her fingers moved with a fluidity that surprised even herself. Each note carried emotion, telling a story of years spent unseen, of a life lived quietly, but filled with passion. The melody spoke of hope, longing, and the small victories she had celebrated in solitude. She closed her eyes, lost in the music, forgetting the cafe, the people, and even herself. There was only the sound rising and falling, wrapping around the listeners in a way that was impossible to ignore. The room grew silent as her performance continued. Conversations ceased, dishes were left on tables, and the usual clatter of the cafe faded into the background. Eyes widened, faces softened, and some people even leaned forward, as if trying to catch every note before it disappeared. The music was no longer just her expression. It had become a bridge, connecting her to every person present in that moment. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the realization that she was finally being heard. A few patrons whispered to each other, unsure if they were dreaming. Some exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. How could someone so quiet, so unnoticed, create something so powerful? The young woman remained focused on the piano, letting her emotions guide her fingers. Each chord resonated with a depth that spoke of years of dedication, sacrifice, and unspoken dreams. The room was alive, yet everything was still, held together by the music that seemed to carry its own life. She had no plan, no sheet music, no audience in mind. She played as she had always done in the safety of her apartment, allowing instinct and feeling to shape the performance. Her emotions poured into each note, capturing the attention of everyone present. The atmosphere in the cafe had changed completely. It was no longer a casual gathering, but a shared experience of beauty and emotion. People felt it in their hearts, even if they could not explain why. Time seemed to stretch and bend. She had been playing for what felt like minutes, but could have been an hour. The melodies intertwined, building in intensity and then softening, like waves moving across a still sea. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others watched her closely, fascinated by the skill and emotion she poured into every gesture. There was an unspoken understanding that this was something extraordinary, something rare and profound. Her confidence grew as she continued. She had always known she could play, but to hear her music reach others in such a way was exhilarating. She allowed herself to experiment, adding subtle variations, pauses, and flourishes that brought even more depth to the performance. Her heart felt light, her mind clear, as though the years of hiding and waiting had been leading to this very moment. The piano, once a private companion, had become a voice that could speak to the world. The audience was captivated. Even those who had come for a simple evening of coffee and conversation found themselves transported. Emotions that had lain dormant stirred joy, nostalgia, sadness, and hope all woven together through her music. Some were moved to tears, others to quiet smiles. No one spoke, afraid that even a whisper might break the spell. She had unknowingly captured the room in a moment of pure connection. As the final notes lingered in the air, she paused, letting silence fill the space. The impact of the performance settled over the cafe like a gentle tide. People were still caught between disbelief and admiration. Slowly, applause began, starting with one hesitant clap and then growing as more joined in. The young woman opened her eyes, startled by the reaction. She had not expected this. She had not expected anyone to notice. Yet here they were, moved by what she had shared from the deepest part of herself. A few people approached her, their faces glowing with amazement. They complimented her skill, asked how long she had been playing, and expressed their astonishment at the emotion she conveyed. For the first time, she felt seen, not just as a waitress or a background presence, but as someone with a voice and a talent that could touch others. The words they spoke were kind, but it was the recognition itself that filled her with an indescribable warmth. She stepped away from the piano, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. The performance had been unplanned, yet it had unfolded perfectly, as if it had been meant to happen all along. Her heart was still racing, but it was a joyful kind of fear, the thrill of sharing something precious and having it embraced. For years, she had practiced in secret, dreaming of this moment, and now it had arrived unexpectedly, quietly and beautifully. The cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but something had changed. Conversations resumed, but there was an energy that lingered, a sense that everyone had witnessed something extraordinary. She moved among the tables with a new awareness of herself, quiet pride that had nothing to do with recognition and everything to do with finally stepping into the light. She had discovered that the world could notice her, that her talent could make people stop, listen, and feel. That night, as she walked home, the streets seemed different. The city lights shone a little brighter, and the sounds of the world seemed richer. She thought about the performance, replaying each note in her mind. The memory filled her with a sense of possibility, a realization that her life could change in ways she had only dreamed of. She had been overlooked for so long, but her music had spoken, and it had been heard. Her apartment welcomed her like a safe haven, but it no longer felt like a place of hiding. She sat at her old piano, smiling to herself, and played again, letting the melodies flow freely. This time, she was not practicing in secret. She was celebrating. She had touched people's hearts, even for a brief moment, and that was a beginning. She realized that her talent had power not just to express her own feelings, but to connect with others, to create shared experiences of emotion and beauty. She knew that more challenges lay ahead. Life would not suddenly become easy, and recognition would not always come. But she had found something invaluable: the courage to step forward, to let her music speak, and to show the world the depth of who she was. The performance at the cafe had been more than an opportunity. It was a revelation, a confirmation that her talent could no longer remain hidden as the night wore on. She continued to play, losing herself in the music. Each note was a reminder of the journey she had taken, the years of struggle, the quiet moments of practice, the patient nurturing of her dream. She felt a profound sense of gratitude for her perseverance, and for the unexpected chance that had allowed her to share her gift. And as the first light of dawn began to touch her room, she knew that this was only the beginning, that her music had a path to follow, and that she was finally ready to walk it. The night after the cafe performance, she could hardly sleep. Her mind replayed the experience over and over, the initial hesitation, the first note that resonated through the room, and the way the audience had gone silent, listening with awe. She could still feel the warmth of their attention, the quiet acknowledgement that she had existed beyond her usual invisible role. It was a feeling that she had never experienced before, one that brought both excitement and nervousness. She lay awake, imagining what her life could be like if she allowed herself to step further into the light. At the cafe the next day, the usual rhythm resumed. Orders were taken, drinks served, tables cleared, and conversations flowed around her as if nothing had changed. But she felt different. Something had shifted inside her. She moved with a quiet confidence that had not been there before. Coworkers noticed it but did not comment directly. Customers sensed a subtle change too, though they could not quite describe it. She had found a spark, an inner strength. It affected every movement and gesture. A few regulars approached her that day, complimenting her on the performance. Their words were sincere, full of surprise and admiration. She thanked them softly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. It was strange to hear praise for something she had always considered private, something she had nurtured in solitude. Yet their recognition validated all the years of hard work and quiet dedication. She realized that her music had power, a way to connect with people that went beyond words or appearances. She began to notice that people looked at her differently. Some were curious, watching her with new interest, while others smiled when they saw her as if they knew a secret about her talent. The world, which had once ignored her, was now beginning to pay attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it gave her hope. She understood that recognition did not come all at once, that it unfolded gradually like a flower opening to the sun. She felt ready to let it unfold for her. After her shift, she returned to her apartment and sat at her old piano. The instrument felt familiar and comforting, yet she approached it with a renewed sense of purpose. The performance at the cafe had been unexpected, but it had taught her something important. She could no longer hide. The world had glimpsed her talent, and she had to honor it. She played with passion, letting her emotions guide each note. The music was richer, more confident, and carried a depth that only experience and practice could create. As she played, she remembered the years of struggle, the late nights, the quiet moments of learning, the sacrifices she had made to survive. Each note was a reflection of her journey, a story of perseverance and hope. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for her own resilience and the small victories that had brought her to this point. Music had been her companion, her refuge, and now it was also her voice. Speaking to a world that had once overlooked her, in the following days, she received unexpected attention. A local music teacher who had been present at the cafe performance reached out to her, praising her skill and offering guidance. A few regular customers mentioned that they knew someone in the music industry who might be interested in hearing her play. Invitations to small gatherings and events began to trickle in. She had never sought recognition, yet it was finding her in ways that felt both exciting and overwhelming. She realized that she needed to prepare herself. To embrace opportunities with courage and determination, her practice became more focused. She experimented with new pieces, explored different styles, and refined her technique. She wanted to be ready for any chance that might come her way, to ensure that her music could speak with clarity and emotion. The piano had always been a source of comfort, but now it was also a tool of transformation. She felt a growing connection between her music and the people who might hear it, a responsibility to share the beauty and emotion she had cultivated in private. At the cafe, she noticed that colleagues and customers alike treated her with a new respect. Co-workers who had previously overlooked her now asked for her opinion, seeking her advice and input. Customers smiled warmly, sometimes stopping to compliment her or ask about her music. The recognition was still modest, yet it carried weight. She understood that change was a process, not an instant shift. Each interaction, each moment of acknowledgement, strengthened her confidence and reinforced her belief in herself. One afternoon, a small local event organizer approached her at the cafe, asking if she would be willing to perform at a community gathering. She hesitated, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. Public performance had always been intimidating, yet she knew that this was an opportunity she could not ignore. After a moment of reflection, she agreed, her heart racing with anticipation. She realized that stepping forward required courage, and that courage was something she had been building quietly all her life. The weeks leading up to the event were filled with preparation. She practiced tirelessly, refining her pieces, experimenting with expression, and imagining the audience's reactions. She was determined to deliver a performance that reflected her true self, one that carried the depth and emotion of her journey. Her small apartment became a sanctuary of creativity. Each practice session, a rehearsal not just of music, but of confidence and self-assurance. On the day of the event, she arrived early, feeling a mixture of nerves and excitement. The venue was modest, a community hall with a small stage and a piano. People were gathering, chatting quietly, unaware of the extraordinary talent about to be revealed. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar excitement in her fingers as she approached the instrument. For a moment she hesitated, remembering the fear and doubt that had accompanied her all these years. Then she reminded herself of the journey she had taken, the years of practice, and the music that had never failed her. She sat down and let her fingers find the keys. The first note resonated through the hall, soft and confident. She played with a mixture of precision and emotion, allowing the music to tell her story. The audience listened quietly, gradually becoming captivated by the depth and beauty of the performance. Each chord, each melody, spoke of years of struggle, perseverance, and quiet dedication. She felt a connection with every person present, as though the music had created an invisible thread linking her to the hearts of her listeners. As the performance continued, the atmosphere transformed. Conversations ceased, and the room became still, held together by the power of her music. Faces softened, eyes widened, and some people closed their eyes, letting the melodies wash over them. She played not for recognition, but for the pure joy of expression, and the hope that her music could touch others as it had touched her. In that moment, she was fully alive, her emotions and talent flowing freely. Unbound by fear or hesitation, the final notes lingered in the air, and the hall remained silent for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then, applause erupted, spontaneous and heartfelt. The young woman looked up, surprised and moved by the intensity of the reaction. People approached her, offering compliments, asking questions, and expressing their admiration. She smiled, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the light, and the world had noticed. It was a moment that would remain etched in her memory forever. After the event, she returned home, her heart still racing with the thrill of the performance. She sat at her own piano, letting her fingers wander across the keys, replaying the melodies in her mind. The music felt different now, imbued with the knowledge that it could touch lives beyond her apartment walls. She realized that her talent was not just a personal sanctuary, but a gift meant to be shared. The experience had transformed her, given her confidence and a sense of purpose that she had never known. In the following weeks, she began to receive more opportunities. Invitations to perform at small venues, community events, and local gatherings continued to arrive. Each new chance was met with careful preparation and growing confidence. She understood that recognition was not instant, that it required patience, dedication, and courage. But she had learned that taking that first step, allowing herself to be seen and heard, was the most important part. Her life began to change gradually, in ways both big and small. People treated her with respect and curiosity, seeking her input and valuing her presence. She found herself connecting with others through music, forming bonds that transcended words and appearances. The world, which had once overlooked her, was now noticing, and she embraced it with humility and gratitude. Each note she played, each performance she gave, strengthened her belief in herself and her purpose. She continued to practice daily, refining her technique, exploring new styles, and creating original compositions. The piano remained her anchor, her refuge, and her voice. She had learned that music was not only a personal expression, but also a bridge to connect with others, to inspire comfort and move people in ways that words alone could not. She felt a growing responsibility to nurture her talent, to honor it, and to share it with the world whenever possible. As she looked ahead, she realized that her journey was far from over. There would be challenges, doubts, and setbacks, but she had discovered something invaluable: the courage to step forward, the ability to share her gift, and the knowledge that her music could create meaningful connections. She felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that she had the strength, talent, and determination to continue growing and making an impact through her art. And so, she played, moving through each day with renewed purpose, embracing every opportunity and finding joy in the music that had always been her guiding light. She had been overlooked for so long, but now she was seen. The sound of her piano would continue to leave people speechless. One note at a time, months had passed since the first time she played at the cafe. Her life had changed in subtle but profound ways. She was no longer just the quiet waitress who moved through the crowd unnoticed. People had begun to see her, to acknowledge her presence, and most importantly, to recognize the depth of her talent. Yet she remained humble, never letting attention distract her from the reason she had begun playing. Music in the first place, the joy of expressing herself and of connecting with others through her melody. She continued her daily routine at the cafe, but now there was a lightness in her step. She moved with purpose, her hands and mind always ready, not just for her work, but for the possibilities that each day could bring. Regular customers had begun to ask about her music, some sharing stories of their own experiences with instruments or art. She listened with a gentle smile, offering encouragement when appropriate, but keeping the focus on her own journey. She understood that her story was unfolding, Every interaction was a thread in the tapestry of her life. One afternoon, a well-known local musician visited the cafe. He had heard about her performance at the previous event and wanted to meet the young woman whose music had left so many in awe. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement as she approached him, unsure of what to expect. His demeanor was kind and respectful, and he spoke to her with genuine admiration for her talent. They discussed music, technique, and her aspirations. He encouraged her to consider performing at larger events to explore opportunities she had previously thought impossible. She listened carefully, absorbing his advice, feeling both inspired and validated. Her evenings were filled with practice, but now she approached the piano with a sense of purpose rather than secrecy. She experimented with new compositions, blending classical techniques with her own intuition. She explored emotions she had never expressed openly, letting the piano become a vessel for her creativity. Her small apartment echoed with melodies that told stories of perseverance, hope, and quiet triumph. Each note was deliberate, each chord carefully considered, yet infused with the raw emotion that had always defined her playing. The first invitation to perform on a larger stage arrived soon after. She was both thrilled and apprehensive. The venue was a small theater in the city, known for showcasing talented local artists. She'd never imagined playing in front of a crowd this large. Doubts surfaced. What if she made mistakes? What if people did not appreciate her music? But she remembered the moment at the cafe, the silent anticipation, and the way the audience had been captivated. She drew strength from that memory, knowing that her talent was real and that she could trust herself. On the day of the performance, she arrived early, observing the stage, the lights, and the empty seats that would soon be filled. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from excitement and the awareness of the significance of this opportunity. She took a deep breath and sat at the piano, feeling the familiar texture of the keys beneath her fingers. The hall was silent as the audience took their seats, unaware of the extraordinary performance that was about to unfold. The first notes rang out, soft and steady, capturing the attention of everyone present. She played with precision and emotion, letting her heart guide her fingers. Each melody was a reflection of her journey, a story of years spent practicing in quiet solitude, of perseverance in the face of invisibility, and of the courage to share her gift with the world. The audience was captivated, some leaning forward in anticipation, others closing their eyes to fully absorb the music. It was a shared experience, a moment where the invisible threads of emotion connected her to each listener. As the performance progressed, her confidence grew. She allowed herself to explore dynamics and expression more freely, creating contrasts between soft, delicate passages and powerful, resonant chords. Her music told a story that transcended words, touching the hearts of those present in a profound way. The audience responded with silence, their attention fully captured. As if they were suspended in the space created by her melodies, it was a moment of pure connection, where the distance between performer and listener disappeared. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a confirmation that her dedication and passion had not been in vain. Music had always been her refuge, but now it was also her voice, reaching people in ways she had only dreamed of. She realized that talent was not just about skill or technique. It was about courage, persistence, and the willingness to share something personal with others. Her performance was a culmination of years of effort, patience, and belief in herself. The final notes resonated through the hall, lingering in the air as the audience remained still for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then applause erupted, powerful and sustained, filling the space with warmth and admiration. She looked up, surprised and moved by the intensity of the reaction. People approached her afterward, offering heartfelt praise, shaking her hand, and expressing how deeply her music had affected them. She smiled, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. She had stepped into the light fully, and the world had responded with acknowledgement and respect. In the days that followed, more opportunities came her way. Invitations to perform at various events, collaborations with other musicians, and even offers to teach or mentor others began to arrive. She approached each opportunity thoughtfully, aware that her talent was a gift that needed nurturing and responsibility. She continued to work at the cafe, balancing her responsibilities with the growing demands of her music career. Each day brought new experiences, challenges, and growth, all of which she embraced with gratitude and determination. Her relationship with the piano deepened. It had been her companion through years of invisibility, her confidant during moments of doubt, and now it was also her means of connecting with others on a profound level. She composed new pieces, drawing inspiration from life experiences, emotions, and the stories of people she encountered. Her music evolved, reflecting the complexity and richness of her journey. Each performance was an opportunity to share not just notes and chords, but a part of her soul. She remained humble despite the recognition and admiration. Fame was not her goal. Sharing her music and connecting with people was. She continued to practice diligently, always striving to improve, to explore, and to express the emotions that words could not capture. She understood that talent was a lifelong journey, one that required patience, discipline, and the courage to keep moving forward. Even when faced with challenges, her life had transformed from quiet invisibility to a world where her presence and talent were acknowledged and celebrated. Yet she remained grounded, appreciating the simple joys of everyday life, the quiet moments at her piano, the warmth of a smile from a regular customer, the feeling of connection that music created. She knew that her journey had been shaped not only by her talent, but also by her resilience, her patience, and her willingness to seize opportunities when they arose. As the years went by, she continued to grow as a musician and as a person. Her performances reached wider audiences, her compositions touched more hearts, and her influence inspired others to pursue their own dreams. She never forgot the early days when she was overlooked, when her talent was hidden in quiet practice sessions and small moments of solitude. Those experiences had shaped her, giving her empathy, humility, and a deep understanding of the power of perseverance. Her story became an example to others, a reminder that talent and passion can exist quietly, unnoticed, until the right moment brings them into the light. She had been overlooked for so long, but her courage, dedication, and belief in herself had changed everything. Her music left people speechless, not because of grandeur or fame, but because it was real, heartfelt, and deeply human. And so she played not for applause or recognition, but for the joy of expression, the connection with others, and the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. She had stepped into the light, and each note she played was a testament to the journey from invisibility to the profound realization that talent, when nurtured with patience and love, could touch lives in ways that words could never capture. Her music would continue to leave people speechless, a legacy of beauty, resilience, and the power of believing in oneself.